The challenge. The arena was massive. The stands were packed with spectators from all over the galaxy. Alien species of every size and shape roared as they watched the fights below. This was no ordinary battle. It was a fight to prove strength, skill, and pride. And today, there was a new challenger. A human. Rachel Turner, a Marine from Earth, stood at the edge of the arena. She was short compared to the other gladiators, her body slim but strong from years of training. The crowd's eyes were on her, and their laughter filled the air. How could this small human possibly stand a chance against the 8-foot alien gladiator standing in front of her? The alien gladiator, with his massive arms and glowing red eyes, let out a low growl as he flexed his muscles. He was built like a tank, every inch of him a weapon. He towered over Rachel, and his smile was one of pure confidence. "Are you sure you want to fight, human?" he sneered, his voice booming in the arena. "I've crushed hundreds of warriors. You will be no different." Rachel didn't flinch. She had heard these kinds of taunts before. The alien's words didn't scare her. She knew what she had to do. Earth soldiers had faced countless dangers before, and they had survived. Now, it was her turn to prove that humans could do the same. The announcer's voice echoed through the arena, announcing the beginning of the match. The crowd went silent, waiting for the battle to begin. Rachel didn't waste time. She knew she couldn't match the alien's strength head-on, so she moved quickly, using her agility to stay out of his reach. She darted forward, trying to get close enough to strike. The alien laughed, clearly amused by her speed. "Is that all you have?" he taunted. "Come on, human, show me something impressive." Rachel's heart raced, but she stayed focused. She had no intention of backing down. She had one goal: to survive and prove that humans were more than just small prey in a galaxy full of giants. The alien moved towards her with terrifying speed, his arms swinging. Rachel ducked just in time, narrowly avoiding a crushing blow. The crowd gasped as she rolled to the side and came up on her feet, ready for another move. The alien swung again, this time with a wide arc meant to hit her no matter where she was. She was fast, but even she couldn't keep dodging forever. Rachel had to find a way to stop him, and fast. She needed to find his weakness. The alien grinned. He was enjoying this. He had never faced a human warrior before, but he didn't think she was anything special. She was small, weak, and outmatched. He was certain of his victory. Every blow he landed sent shockwaves through the ground. The force of his strikes shook the entire arena. Rachel felt the impact as the alien's fist brushed against her shoulder. Pain shot through her, but she gritted her teeth and pushed forward. She wasn't going to let a little pain stop her. She had trained for this. She had been through worse. The alien moved in again, his massive foot crushing the ground as he stomped forward. Rachel quickly assessed her surroundings. She couldn't beat him in a direct fight. That much was clear. She had to think smart. Just as the alien lunged forward to grab her, she darted to the side and grabbed a nearby metal rod that had been left on the ground. She swung it at the alien's leg, aiming for the soft spot behind his knee. The blow landed with a loud clang, and for the first time the alien staggered back. The crowd went silent. Rachel's move had surprised everyone. Even the alien looked momentarily stunned. "Not bad, human," the gladiator growled, rubbing his leg. "But that's not enough to stop me." Rachel's heart pounded, but she couldn't afford to hesitate. This was her chance to prove that humans weren't weak. She wasn't going to back down. Not now. The alien charged again, but this time Rachel was ready. She didn't wait for him to come to her. Instead, she ran toward him. The alien's eyes widened in disbelief as Rachel jumped up, using the rod as leverage to flip over his head. She landed behind him, her back against his massive form. For a brief moment, she was on top. The alien's arrogance had given her the opening she needed, but she couldn't celebrate yet. She had to act fast. Rachel spun around, aiming for the alien's back. She swung the rod with all her strength. The blow hit hard, and the alien staggered forward, growling in pain. But he didn't fall. The crowd was on the edge of their seats. Some were starting to cheer for the human. Was it possible? Could she really beat the giant alien? The alien turned around, his face twisted in rage. He was no longer laughing. His pride had been wounded and he was not used to being challenged. He raised his fists, ready to strike with full force. Rachel felt the weight of the moment. She was standing against a creature that had defeated countless warriors. And yet she was still standing. She knew she couldn't let him get the upper hand again. This was only the beginning. The real fight was just starting. The first strike. The battle raged on. Rachel's heart pounded in her chest, her body aching from the alien gladiator's punishing blows. She had surprised him, yes, but that only seemed to enrage him further. The air was thick with tension as the crowd waited for the next move. Would the human continue to surprise them? Or would the giant alien finally unleash his fury? The alien's eyes narrowed as he stood tall, glaring down at her with a mix of anger and amusement. His powerful chest heaved as he prepared for his next strike. His massive fists clenched tightly. He had underestimated her once, but that mistake wouldn't happen again. This time, he was going to end it. "You've amused me, human," the alien growled, his voice like a low rumble of thunder. "But your tricks won't save you. I'm going to crush you." Rachel's mind raced. She couldn't afford to let him get close again. Every time he hit her, it felt like the world itself shook. She had to outthink him. She had to outlast him. But how? The alien lunged forward with terrifying speed, his fist aimed straight at Rachel's head. She barely had time to react, but her instincts kicked in. She dropped to the ground, rolling beneath the alien's swinging fist. She could feel the wind from his punch rush past her face as she barely avoided a crushing blow. The crowd gasped, watching the human slip out of the gladiator's grip. But the alien wasn't done. He spun around, his other fist coming down with such force that the ground beneath them cracked. The earth shook violently, and the sound of his strike was deafening. Rachel was on her feet in an instant, her body still aching from the previous blows, but adrenaline pumping through her veins. She had to move. The alien's next punch was coming faster than before. She couldn't afford to wait. She dodged again, barely escaping the strike that could have flattened her. But she didn't have much room left. The arena walls were closing in. There was nowhere to run. The alien's voice rang out with a laugh that echoed through the stadium. "Is this all you've got, human? You're running out of tricks." Rachel gritted her teeth. She had to get closer to him, but he was too fast, too strong. He was closing in and she had nowhere to hide. Then a thought sparked in her mind. The alien was too focused on his raw power. He hadn't paid attention to his own weakness. He underestimated her because she was small, quick, and agile. But the environment around them could give her an edge. The arena had been designed for bigger, stronger gladiators, not humans. With a sudden burst of energy, Rachel darted to the side, her feet pounding against the cracked stone floor. The alien followed, his enormous feet thundering as he pursued her. But Rachel was already at the wall, leaping off it with a powerful kick. She soared through the air, using the momentum to swing behind the alien and land a quick blow to the back of his knee. The alien roared in pain as he stumbled, clearly caught off guard. Rachel didn't give him time to recover. She quickly darted to his side, aiming for the exposed soft spot under his arm. Her fist landed with a loud thud. The alien staggered, his face twisting in a mix of rage and surprise. He hadn't expected this level of resistance. "You're fast for a human," he growled, his breath ragged. "But you're still weak." Rachel's chest heaved as she caught her breath. Every movement was a battle now. She had to stay sharp. He was starting to tire, but so was she. Her body was bruised and the pain was becoming unbearable, but she refused to stop. This fight was far from over. The alien turned, his eyes blazing with fury. He lunged again, but this time, Rachel was ready. She dropped to the ground, sliding beneath him. The alien's massive foot came down hard, missing her by mere inches. The ground cracked beneath his weight, and for a moment it felt like the whole arena might collapse. Rachel had no choice now. She couldn't keep dodging forever. She had to act. She rolled away from his grasp, using her agility to get to her feet quickly. Her eyes scanned the arena, and that's when she saw it. The ropes hanging from the ceiling. The alien had been too focused on the battle to notice the swinging ropes, used by previous gladiators for aerial attacks. This could be her chance. With a burst of strength, she leapt towards the ropes, grabbing them and swinging high into the air. The crowd gasped as she soared above the gladiator, the wind rushing past her as she gained speed. The alien looked up just as Rachel descended, her body coming down with incredible force. She aimed for his neck, hoping the surprise attack would catch him off guard. She landed a solid strike, knocking him off balance. The gladiator stumbled backward, the impact sending him crashing into the arena wall. The audience was in shock. Had the human marine really done it? Had she knocked the giant alien down? But, as the dust cleared, the alien stood, his body trembling with fury. He looked at Rachel with eyes burning with hatred. "You think you've won?" the gladiator roared. "This is far from over, human. I will destroy you." Rachel's heart raced as she backed away. She had angered him. She had drawn blood. And now the real battle was about to begin. But there was something in the alien's eyes, something that hadn't been there before. Fear. A crack in his confidence. He wasn't just angry anymore. He was worried. Rachel took a deep breath, her muscles screaming in pain. She had the advantage now. She had shown him that she wasn't just another weak human. She was a warrior, and she wasn't going to back down. As the alien lunged again, Rachel could feel it in the air. This fight was far from over, and the real test was just beginning. The hidden strike. The roar of the crowd echoed in Rachel's ears as she faced the alien gladiator once more. His chest was rising and falling, his breaths heavy and labored, but his eyes burned with a newfound determination. The ground beneath them was cracked and uneven, evidence of the sheer force of their combat. Rachel's body ached, her muscles screaming for rest, but there was no time for weakness. Not now. The alien had underestimated her before, but now he was angry, more dangerous than ever. She could feel the intensity in the air, the tension crackling like static before a storm. This was no longer just a fight for survival. It was a battle of wills, and Rachel couldn't afford to lose. The alien wiped blood from his lip, his sneer widening. "You're good, human, but it's too late for tricks." Rachel didn't respond. She couldn't afford to waste energy on words. She kept her stance low, her hands ready, watching every movement of the giant gladiator. His rage was clouding his judgment, but it was also making him more unpredictable, more reckless. One wrong move, and she would be crushed beneath his massive fists. He lunged at her again, this time with a series of vicious strikes. His fists came down like hammers, each blow hitting with the force of a collapsing building. Rachel dodged and rolled, narrowly avoiding each attack. She had to be faster, smarter. This was her only chance. As the gladiator swung again, his foot slammed into the ground just inches from where Rachel had been standing. The shockwave from the impact rattled her bones. She could feel the ground tremble beneath her feet, the air vibrating with the alien's power. She had to keep moving. If she allowed him to corner her, she was finished. Her eyes darted around the arena, searching for something, anything that could give her an advantage. The walls were high, smooth, but the ropes were still there. She could swing again, use her speed to her advantage, but she didn't have much time. The alien was closing in fast, his massive body charging like a freight train. As he raised his fist to strike once more, Rachel saw her opening. She sprinted towards him faster than she'd ever moved before. The alien's eyes narrowed as he prepared to land another crushing blow. But Rachel had already anticipated his move. She slid underneath his reach, coming up behind him as he tried to turn. He was too slow. His massive form struggled to adjust to her lightning-fast movements. Rachel's mind raced as she grasped a piece of debris from the ground, sharp, jagged metal. With a swift motion, she aimed for his vulnerable side, driving the shard into the alien's ribs. The gladiator's eyes widened in shock as the metal bit deep into his flesh. A sharp hiss escaped his mouth, and for the first time, he faltered. His body trembled with the shock of pain, but he quickly recovered, growling in fury. He spun around, grabbing Rachel by the wrist with one massive hand and tossing her across the arena. Rachel crashed into the wall with a sickening thud, the impact leaving her breathless. She fought to stay conscious, her vision blurring, her body screaming in pain. But she couldn't afford to lose. She had to keep going. The alien's shadow loomed over her as he approached, his eyes glowing with a mix of rage and disbelief. "You're tougher than I thought, human," he spat, his voice filled with venom. "But this ends now." Rachel pushed herself to her feet, her hand gripping the wall for support. She could barely stand, her legs shaking, but she knew she couldn't let him get close again. He was stronger, faster, and now, more determined than ever. She had to use her mind, not just her body. As the Gladiator closed in, Rachel's eyes locked onto something she hadn't noticed before. A series of thick chains hung from the ceiling, holding up various arena decorations and lighting fixtures. The chains were old, rusted, but they might still be strong enough to hold. Her heart raced as an idea formed. It was a long shot, but it was her only chance. She couldn't outmuscle him. She couldn't outrun him forever. But if she could trap him just for a moment, maybe that would be enough. The alien was getting closer, and Rachel knew she didn't have much time. She lunged towards the nearest chain, using every last ounce of strength she had left. The alien raised his fist, aiming for her head, but Rachel was faster. She grabbed the chain and swung it toward the Gladiator, catching him by surprise. The chain wrapped around his neck in a violent coil. The alien let out a strangled roar, his eyes wide in shock as he struggled against the sudden restraint. For a moment he faltered, his hands scrabbling at the chain, trying to tear it off. The crowd went silent, watching in stunned silence as the mighty Gladiator struggled against a human's cleverness. Rachel wasn't done yet. She twisted the chain tighter, using her weight to pull him off balance. The alien stumbled backward, his massive feet sliding on the cracked ground. The chains dug deeper into his throat as he gasped for air, his movements growing more frantic by the second. "You think you can defeat me with this?" he spat, his voice hoarse as he tried to fight off the chain. "You'll regret this, human." Rachel gritted her teeth, focusing all her energy on keeping the alien off balance. Her arms burned from the strain, but she didn't let go. This was her chance. She could hear the alien's breath coming in ragged gasps, his strength faltering. "Ciao," alien roared, his fists pounding the ground as he tried to free himself. But Rachel was relentless. She swung her legs forward, using the momentum to flip herself onto his back. With a twist of her body, she drove her knee into his spine, knocking him off balance. For a moment, the alien faltered, his huge body tipping sideways. The crowd gasped. Could it be? Was the human actually winning? The Gladiator let out a frustrated snarl as he tried to regain his footing. His breathing was erratic now, his once confident demeanor cracking. The giant warrior was being outwitted by a human. He was beginning to realize that Rachel wasn't just a threat. She was a force to be reckoned with. But as Rachel tightened the chain again, she knew that the battle was far from over. The alien was not going to go down without a fight, and the true test of her strength, of her humanity, was just beginning. The final test. The alien gladiator's massive body trembled with the effort to break free from Rachel's grasp. His once mighty strength was now waning, his breath ragged, as the chain dug into his neck. The crowd's silence was deafening, the tension so thick it was almost suffocating. Rachel's grip on the chain was ironclad, her pulse hammering in her ears as she pulled tighter, forcing the gladiator to his knees. But even as the alien's strength faltered, there was a spark in his eyes, a flicker of pure, unrelenting rage. His arms shot out, grabbing the edges of the chain with brutal force, yanking it from Rachel's hands. She gasped, her fingers slipping from the rusted metal as the alien tore it free with a roar. The gladiator staggered to his feet, his body, still gasping for air, but his anger reignited. He was bruised, bleeding, and now humiliated. His pride, the one thing that had kept him standing, was shattered. But this was his final act. His fury turned into something darker, something terrifying. "You will fall, human," he hissed, his voice low and venomous. Rachel didn't wait for him to charge again. She couldn't. He was stronger than her, faster, and she knew that the moment he regained his full strength, this battle would be over. She had to keep him off balance. She had to keep moving. Without hesitation, she sprinted toward the nearest pillar, using the environment to her advantage. Her feet pounded against the cracked stone, each step pushing her closer to the edge of the arena. The alien's roar followed her, his footsteps shaking the very foundation of the ground as he rushed after her faster than she expected. Rachel ducked beneath a low-hanging banner, the alien's fist slamming into it with a crash that shook the walls. She darted through the gap, moving like a shadow, each movement calculated. The alien followed, too enraged to think clearly, too consumed by his desire for revenge to realize that his anger was clouding his judgment. She had a plan, and she wasn't going to let it slip away. She had no choice but to keep pushing him into the open. But the alien wasn't as easy to outsmart as she'd hoped. With a sudden burst of speed, he closed the gap between them, his arms sweeping out in a wide arc. The force of his swing sent a shockwave through the air. Rachel had only seconds to react. She leapt to the side, narrowly avoiding the crushing blow. Her heart raced in her chest, the sheer speed and strength of the alien making her feel small and fragile in comparison. As she hit the ground, she slid across the arena floor, scrambling to regain her footing. The alien was right behind her, his shadow swallowing her in an instant. He reached down, his hand closing around her ankle, and pulled her back toward him with terrifying ease. "You're not escaping me, human," the gladiator growled, his grip tightening, pulling her closer. "This ends now." Rachel gasped, her mind racing. The strength in his hand was overwhelming, and for a moment she thought it might be the end. But then, in the fleeting second before his fist came crashing down on her, she remembered something. The arena wasn't just a place for fights. It was a place of opportunity. She twisted her body with every ounce of strength left in her, kicking her legs up to make contact with a low-hanging piece of debris. It wasn't much, just a small piece of metal, but as it fell from the overhead structure, it hit the alien directly on the back of the head. For a brief moment, he faltered. He winced, his grip loosening just enough for Rachel to break free. She scrambled to her feet, her hands shaking with the exertion, her heart pounding in her chest. This was it. There was no turning back now. She could see it in his eyes. The alien's confidence had cracked. His fury had made him sloppy, and Rachel had just gained an advantage. The gladiator roared in frustration, rubbing the back of his head as if the blow had shaken his resolve. He lunged at her again, but this time Rachel was ready. She ducked beneath his outstretched arms, using his own momentum to sidestep him. She reached for another piece of debris, a long, jagged shard of metal, and with a swift motion, she plunged it into the side of his leg. The alien let out a strangled yell, his knee buckling as the metal embedded deep into his flesh. Blood oozed from the wound, and for the first time in the battle, the gladiator staggered, clearly disoriented and weakened. Rachel didn't hesitate. She knew this was the moment. With every ounce of her remaining strength, she rushed toward him, aiming for the alien's exposed throat. Her foot connected with his side, throwing him off balance as she swung her leg around. The alien stumbled, his feet sliding across the arena floor. The crowd gasped as the gladiator collapsed to one knee, his face contorted in disbelief. Was this the end? Could the human really defeat him? The gladiator glared at Rachel, his breathing ragged and labored. He was still massive, still strong, but she could see the uncertainty in his eyes. His pride was shattered. He had been beaten not by strength alone but by the human spirit, the sheer will to survive, to fight no matter the odds. "You think you've won?" he sneered, his voice dripping with venom. "You are nothing. You're still a fragile human, and I am a warrior. This will not be your victory." Rachel stood tall, blood dripping from her own wounds, her body aching with exhaustion. But she wasn't done. She wasn't going to let him take this from her. "You're wrong," she said, her voice cold, steady. "I'm not giving up." The alien's eyes narrowed. He was broken, his arrogance no longer a shield. He knew it, deep down. This fight was hers. Rachel took a deep breath and prepared for the final move. There was one last chance to end this. One last strike. With the strength she had left, she launched herself at the alien, aiming directly for his chest, pushing her weight into a final bone-crushing blow. For a moment, time seemed to slow. The gladiator's eyes widened as Rachel's fist slammed into his chest, the force of the punch sending shockwaves through his massive body. He gasped, unable to catch his breath, his eyes filled with disbelief. The gladiator collapsed to the ground, his mighty form crumpling beneath the weight of Rachel's strike. The arena fell silent, the crowd's collective breath held in stunned amazement. Rachel stood over him, her chest heaving, her body battered and bruised. The battle was over, and she had won. The unseen enemy. The arena was eerily quiet. The deafening roars of the crowd had faded into an unsettling stillness. Rachel stood over the fallen gladiator, her breath coming in ragged gasps, her muscles burning from the intensity of the fight. Her hands shook, but she didn't care. She had done it. She had defeated him. The mighty alien gladiator, the pride of the arena, was on the ground, his chest rising and falling in shallow, broken breaths. For a brief moment, Rachel let herself feel the weight of victory. She had done what no one thought possible. But it wasn't over. Not yet. The gladiator was still alive, barely. But there was something else in the air now. A strange, oppressive feeling that sent a chill down Rachel's spine. The crowd's silence was unnerving, their eyes glued to her as if waiting for something to happen. Rachel's heart raced again, but this time it wasn't from the battle. It was the gut-wrenching feeling that something much darker was about to unfold. The gladiator's hand twitched, his body shaking as he tried to push himself up, but the effort was half-hearted. He couldn't move as fast, as powerful as before. But the look in his eyes told Rachel that he wasn't just going to lie there and accept defeat. No, he was planning something. Suddenly, the ground beneath them trembled. The arena's walls seemed to hum with an ominous vibration. It wasn't from the gladiator's struggle. This was something different, something much more dangerous. Rachel instinctively dropped into a defensive stance, her eyes scanning the perimeter of the arena. She wasn't sure what was happening, but she knew it couldn't be good. The energy in the air had shifted, growing heavier, more oppressive. The gladiator's body twitched again, this time with more urgency, and he let out a guttural growl. "You think you've won?" His voice was raspy, almost like he was choking on his own words. "The true test is yet to come, human." Rachel's brow furrowed. What was he talking about? Before she could react, a low hum filled the air, followed by a piercing screech. The ground shook violently now, and Rachel's body jerked as the vibrations rattled her bones. She barely had time to react as a massive metal door at the far end of the arena slid open with a loud, grinding noise. From the shadows, something massive began to emerge, a shape, hulking and dark, emerging from the depths of the arena's underbelly. Rachel's eyes widened as she saw what was coming toward her. It was another creature, larger than the gladiator, more menacing, with glowing eyes and jagged spiked armor covering its body. This new threat was unlike anything she had faced before. It was clear that the alien gladiator had been nothing but the opening act. The true challenge was still to come. The crowd's silence deepened, their eyes glued to the new arrival as it advanced, its steps heavy and measured. The alien gladiator, still struggling to rise, managed a twisted smile. "You thought I was the greatest?" He hissed through gritted teeth, blood dribbling from his mouth. "You've only fought a pawn. Now you face the queen." Rachel's stomach dropped as the full weight of his words sank in. She had just defeated a piece of the puzzle. Now, the real battle was about to begin. The massive creature loomed in front of her, its eyes gleaming with predatory intent. Its body was plated in thick, spiked armor, and its four arms, each more powerful than a truck, flexed with an almost unnatural grace. It didn't make a sound, but Rachel could feel the heat of its presence radiating off its dark form. She didn't know how she was going to beat this monster, but one thing was certain. She wasn't going down without a fight. As the creature took another step forward, Rachel's mind raced. She was exhausted, Her body felt like it was made of stone, each movement a struggle. But she couldn't back down now. The crowd was watching, and she had no choice but to face this new terror head-on. The alien gladiator, now crouching on the ground, lifted a trembling hand. "You have no chance against her," he warned, his voice barely a whisper. "She's a destroyer, a force of nature. You will fall." Rachel took a deep breath, steadying herself. She didn't have time to process the alien's warning. This was it, the fight for her life. She had no idea how powerful the creature was, but she couldn't let fear control her. Not now. The creature lunged. Its first strike came with the speed of a blur. Its massive claws slashed toward Rachel, and she only narrowly avoided being impaled by diving to the side. The force of the attack sent a shockwave through the ground, and Rachel's ears rang from the impact. Her body ached with the effort of evading the blow, but there was no time to catch her breath. The creature was relentless. Rachel sprang to her feet and began circling, watching the creature's every move. She needed to find an opening. She couldn't let it land another hit. Each swipe of its claws tore up the ground with terrifying ease, and the air was thick with the smell of scorched earth. The creature hissed, its glowing eyes tracking Rachel's every movement. It moved with unnerving precision, its forearms swinging in perfect synchrony, each attack designed to corner her. She dodged another strike, rolling beneath its swinging claws, and came up behind it, hoping to land a blow of her own. But as she went to strike, the creature spun around with frightening speed, its armored tail sweeping toward her. Rachel barely had time to react as the tail lashed out, slamming into her side with the force of a wrecking ball. She was sent flying across the arena, crashing into the wall with a sickening thud. Pain exploded through her body. Her vision blurred, and for a moment she thought the world had gone black. But she refused to give up. She couldn't, not after everything she'd fought for. With a groan, Rachel pushed herself to her feet, blood dripping from her side. The creature loomed over her, its glowing eyes filled with cold, calculated malice. It was playing with her, savoring the moment before it delivered the final blow. But Rachel wasn't done. She couldn't afford to be. She had one final card to play. As the creature raised its claws for the killing strike, Rachel's eyes locked onto the rusted chains that hung from the ceiling, chains that had been part of the arena's decoration. Her mind raced, formulating a desperate plan. The creature's claws came down, but Rachel wasn't there. She had darted to the side at the last moment, grabbing hold of one of the chains and swinging herself upward with every ounce of strength she had left. The creature roared in fury as it missed, but Rachel didn't stop. She climbed higher, using the chain to swing herself toward the overhead lights. She wasn't going to let this beast get the best of her, not when she still had a trick left up her sleeve. The creature snapped its jaws in frustration as it tried to follow her, but it was too slow. Rachel swung down on the chain, gathering momentum. In one swift, decisive motion, she released her hold and hurtled toward the creature. Time seemed to slow as she twisted midair, her body arcing toward the monster's exposed back. With a roar, she landed directly on top of it, her legs wrapping around its armored body as she grabbed hold of its neck. The creature struggled, but Rachel wasn't about to let go. She pressed every ounce of strength into her hands, using her body to force the creature down. It screeched in rage, its claws slashing at the air. But Rachel didn't flinch. She was no longer just fighting for survival. She was fighting for her life and for the victory she had earned. The creature's thrashing slowed, and its body went limp. The fight was far from over, but Rachel had just taken the first step toward winning it, and as the crowd's cheers began to rise, she knew this fight was just beginning. The reckoning. Rachel stood over the fallen beast, her chest heaving as the adrenaline slowly faded from her veins. She was battered and bruised, every inch of her body aching, but she had done it. She had taken down the monstrous creature that seemed unstoppable just moments before. Her hands were trembling, the metallic taste of blood in her mouth. But she refused to let weakness show. This was only the beginning. The arena was eerily silent, all eyes fixed on her. The crowd, usually so eager to cheer for their champions, seemed to hold their breath in anticipation. Something was coming, something that made the air feel thick with dread. The Gladiator, the alien queen's pawn, was still alive. Barely. But he wasn't the only threat in the arena. The walls seemed to pulse with an unsettling energy, as though they were alive, watching her every move. Rachel's heart skipped a beat as the ground began to tremble once more. The arena's lights flickered, casting long shadows across the blood-stained floor. Her senses were on high alert, her every muscle coiled and ready for whatever came next. She was prepared, or at least she told herself she was. But deep down, she felt the weight of the unknown pressing down on her chest. Then, from the shadows beyond the arena, a voice echoed, a voice so powerful and commanding that it seemed to shake the very foundation of the place. It was deep, resonant, filled with an ancient authority that made Rachel's blood run cold. "You fought well, human," the voice boomed, "but your fight is far from over." Rachel spun around, searching the shadows for the source of the voice. Her instincts screamed at her to move, to prepare for whatever was coming, but there was nothing, no sign of movement, no shape in the darkness, only the eerie stillness, the oppressive air that seemed to thicken with every passing second. Then, without warning, the ground cracked beneath her feet. A huge, jagged tear split the floor open, sending shards of stone flying in all directions. Rachel leapt backward just in time to avoid being crushed. The roar of the breaking ground was deafening, and the entire arena shook like a beast coming to life. She barely had time to catch her breath before a massive shadow rose from the depths below. It was her, the queen, the alien queen, towering above them all, stepped out from the newly formed chasm with an air of regal authority. Her body was an unsettling blend of beauty and terror, with sleek silver skin that seemed to shimmer in the dim light. Her eyes, large and glowing with an unnatural, otherworldly light, locked onto Rachel with an intensity that made her skin crawl. The crowd gasped, their collective murmur of awe and fear barely audible over the oppressive silence. The queen was a monster, a creature of unimaginable power, and she was not here to play games. Rachel's heart pounded in her chest as the queen's presence enveloped the arena. She could feel the weight of her gaze pressing down on her, could sense the queen's power radiating outward like an aura of destruction. The air around Rachel seemed to warp, bending under the force of the queen's presence. This was no ordinary fight. This was the final showdown, and Rachel was standing on the precipice, the edge of the abyss with no way back. The gladiator, now barely able to sit up, looked up at the queen in fear. His eyes were wide, filled with something Rachel couldn't quite place. Was it terror? Respect? Or something darker? The queen turned to him with a cold smile, a smile that sent a chill down Rachel's spine. "You failed," she hissed, her voice as cold and smooth as the blade of a knife. "You were nothing but a warm-up for her." The gladiator's lips quivered, but he didn't speak. He knew better than to argue with the queen. Everyone in the arena knew what would happen to those who dared challenge her. They were never seen again. Rachel knew this too, but she didn't have time to dwell on it. She had to focus. She couldn't let herself be distracted by the queen's cruelty. With one final chilling glance at the fallen gladiator, the queen turned her full attention to Rachel. Her eyes gleamed with a dangerous amusement, as if she were watching a mere insect that had somehow escaped her grasp. "You think you're worthy of defeating me, human?" The queen's voice was low, filled with malice. "You think you can survive against the might of my empire?" She took a step forward, and the ground seemed to buckle beneath her weight. "You will break, and when you do, I will make sure everyone knows your name." Rachel's body tensed as the queen's words hit her like a physical blow. She had heard stories about the alien queens, how they could crush entire armies with a single thought, how their mere presence could shatter the will of the strongest warriors. And yet here she was, standing in front of this nightmare, and still her heart beat with defiance. "I'm not afraid of you," Rachel spat, her voice steady though her hands trembled. "You're just another monster, and I've fought monsters before." The queen's lips curled into a wicked smile, her sharp teeth glinting in the low light. "We shall see, human." Without warning, the queen lunged at her, moving with an unnatural speed for her massive size. Her hands, each the size of Rachel's torso, reached for her with terrifying force. Rachel barely had time to react, dodging to the side as the queen's claws scraped through the air, leaving trails of light in their wake. The force of the queen's attack sent a gust of wind that nearly knocked Rachel off her feet. The ground beneath them cracked again as the queen landed, her massive feet shattering the stone like it was paper. Rachel's heart raced as she scrambled backward, trying to put some distance between herself and the queen, but it was no use. The queen was too fast, too powerful. Her every movement seemed to carry an unbearable weight, as though the entire arena were bending to her will. Rachel's mind raced, but all she could think of was one thing: survive. She needed to find an opening. She needed to stay alive long enough to outsmart this monster. But how? The queen's power was overwhelming, and with every step Rachel felt her confidence slipping away. Just as the queen prepared to strike again, Rachel's eyes caught something in the distance, a faint glimmer of light. A weapon. Her heartbeat quickened. She didn't have much time, but if she could reach it, maybe, just maybe, she could turn the tide of the battle. With everything she had left, Rachel sprinted toward the weapon, her body screaming in protest. The queen's roar of fury echoed behind her, but Rachel didn't look back. She couldn't afford to. She was running out of time. The weapon glinted in the shadows, a blade long and sharp with alien runes etched into its surface. It pulsed, with an eerie light as though it were alive. Rachel grabbed it, her fingers closing around the hilt as she raised it high. The queen was right behind her now, and Rachel could feel the ground shake with every step the queen took. There was no turning back now. She turned, facing the queen, her heart pounding in her chest. This was it, the moment of truth. The queen smiled, and for the first time, Rachel saw fear in her eyes. The final strike. Rachel's breath came in shallow gasps as she stood her ground, the glowing alien blade gripped tightly in her hands. Her mind was a blur of thoughts, adrenaline pumping through her veins, pushing her past the limits of exhaustion. Every part of her screamed to run, to retreat from the monster that towered above her. But her legs refused to betray her. She couldn't turn back, not now. Not when everything she had fought for was on the line. The queen loomed over her, a dark silhouette against the flickering lights of the arena. Her eyes burned with malevolent energy, glowing brighter than ever before. The air was thick with tension, as if the very fabric of the universe was holding its breath. The crowd had long since gone silent, sensing the finality of this moment. "You dare stand against me?" The queen's voice was a low, guttural growl, filled with centuries of scorn. "You are nothing but a tiny speck in my kingdom, a fleeting moment in the vastness of time. I will crush you like I have crushed so many before you." Rachel's heart pounded in her chest, but she didn't flinch. She stood tall, her eyes locked on the queen's. "You've underestimated me." With a sudden roar, the queen lunged forward, faster than Rachel had ever seen her move. Her massive claws swept through the air with a force that could shatter stone. Rachel ducked, barely avoiding the queen's deadly strike. The ground beneath her cracked open, sending debris flying in all directions. But Rachel didn't falter. She was faster now, fueled by a fire she had never known before. The queen spun around, her eyes narrowing in fury. "You cannot escape me, human," she hissed. But Rachel had already anticipated the move. She darted to the side, slipping past the queen's reach. Her eyes locked on her target, the queen's chest. There was only one weak spot in her armor, one place where her power wasn't absolute. Rachel's gaze flickered to it, the faint glimmer of vulnerability hidden beneath the queen's cruel exterior. The queen roared again, her claws sweeping through the air, but Rachel was already in motion, moving like a blur. She leapt, the alien, blade raised high, and with every ounce of strength she could muster, she drove it deep into the queen's chest. The impact was brutal. The blade sank into the queen's flesh, the runes glowing brighter as if they were feeding off her blood. The queen's eyes widened in shock, her mouth opening in a silent scream. For a moment, time seemed to freeze, the sound of the arena drowned out by the sheer weight of the moment. Rachel could feel the Queen's life force slipping away, the pulse of her immense power fading as the blade pierced deeper. "No," the Queen whispered, her voice trembling. "This can't be." But it was. Rachel had done it. With a final guttural scream, the Queen collapsed to the ground, her massive body hitting the arena floor with a deafening thud. The once mighty creature lay still, her eyes dimming as the life drained from her. The crowd, which had been holding its breath in anticipation, erupted into an explosion of noise. Some cheered, some gasped in disbelief, but Rachel didn't hear them. She only heard the pounding of her own heart, the rush of victory, the realization that she had just toppled a giant. But there was no time to celebrate. The ground beneath her feet began to tremble again. This wasn't over. Not yet. Rachel turned, her eyes scanning the arena, searching for any sign of the next threat. The Queen had fallen, but something felt wrong. The air was still thick with energy, as if the arena itself was preparing for something else, something even worse. And then, she saw it. In the far corner of the arena, a strange portal began to open, crackling with dark energy. It was unlike anything Rachel had ever seen before, a swirling vortex of power, unstable and violent. Something was coming through, something even more terrifying than the Queen. Rachel didn't have much time to think. She had to act, and she had to act now. She sprinted toward the portal, the alien blade still clutched tightly in her hand. Her mind raced as she tried to make sense of what was happening. Had the Queen been only a pawn in a much larger game? Was this the true enemy? She couldn't afford to hesitate. She had fought too hard to back down now. As she approached the portal, a voice echoed from the darkness beyond. "You are brave, human, but your fight is far from over." The voice was cold, hollow, filled with malice. "You will soon understand that the Queen was only a small part of something much bigger." Rachel's pulse quickened as she stepped closer to the portal. The swirling darkness seemed to pull at her as though it were trying to suck her in. She gritted her teeth and forced herself forward. There was no turning back now. She had to stop whatever was coming through. She had to protect her people. But then, just as she reached the portal's edge, a figure stepped through, a figure that made her blood run cold. It was a being taller than any human, with armor made of dark, jagged metal. Its eyes burned with an intense red light, and its every movement radiated an overwhelming aura of power. The figure spoke, its voice deep and echoing like a distant thunderclap. "I am the Overlord," it declared, its words reverberating in the very air around them. "And you, human, have just awakened the wrath of an entire empire." Rachel's heart dropped. The Overlord. She had heard whispers of this being, a leader of an ancient race, a conqueror who had ravaged countless worlds. She had faced the Queen, but this was something entirely different. She was standing on the precipice of destruction. With one final defiant breath, Rachel raised her blade, her eyes never leaving the Overlord's. "Then let's see if you're as powerful as you think," she said, her voice steady, even in the face of the unknown. The battle had only just begun.